Recording in progress.
Way down, Jamie.
Good morning and welcome to Making Sense of It. I am Mona Duncan, your moderator, and this program is our gift to you from the Glasser Institute for Choice Theory. Each week we have a faculty member talk about one of Dr. Glasser's exciting ideas and how it has been beneficial to them personally. And our guest today is Jan Moray. Jan, welcome.
Thank you, Mona. It's good to be here.
And Jan is going to be talking with us about how we can use questions as a way of influencing. So it sounds real interesting. Jan, I'd like to hear what you have to tell us.
Okay. All right. When I first learned about the questioning process of reality therapy, I really didn't appreciate its power. In fact, it's kind of like, okay, question, so what? But I do remember there was one participant in my basic intensive training. She was a professor of counseling at some university in Texas, don't remember which one. And she was just taken aback by that. She said, why would you ask all these questions in counseling? And it's like, well, I guess it's a different way to approach things. And then I went to my advanced intensive with Bob Wobbelding, and he introduced the Colombo theory, which is, help me understand where you're coming from, from the point of view where, I'm not telling you what's right or wrong. Help me understand your way of thinking. And it's then that I started to really understand the power of the question, because when you go around telling people you should do this, you shouldn't do that, this is the right way, this is wrong, this is the data that supports it, people just turn you off right away. But if you start questioning, that's where that self-evaluation comes from. And then the questions promote the self-evaluation. And so I think that's very powerful, when you're trying to get somebody to listen to your point of view, instead of saying all these reasons why you're right and they're wrong, you're just turning them off. But if you can have them think about the questions, ask the questions, then that's more effective. And so we call it self-evaluation for yourself, but I think of it as, in real life, it's critical thinking. You don't just accept what is told to you, you question it and try to understand it and make an informed decision about the thing that you're researching. And so, but sometimes our critical thinking process gets hijacked by emotions, and marketers are so good at this. They're good at manipulating us and instilling, fear. I'm fear of missing out. I got to have this or whatever it is. And so those emotions then hijack our thinking. And so, we're scared of something, and so we think, oh my God, we got to do this, but we're not really thinking it through. And so we'll go back to total behavior, where we know that feelings and thinking are one of, two of the four components of total behavior. And, we can let the feelings be the driver, or we can let the thinking be the driver. And so, which one do we want to control us and to dictate, what we do? Is it the thinking part or the emotion part? And so as I reflect back in my life, I can find many examples of when I resisted change, and I'm a big resistor of change. Well, it depends on what it is, but I guess everyone's that way. If it's something you agree with initially, it's a lot easier to accept than when it's something that's telling you to change your behavior. And I think about back in the 1960s when seatbelts came into, they started promoting those and telling you that, for safety, and they gave you all the stats of the people killed and all that kind of stuff. And, most people just resisted them at first. And, my mom was, one of those who really didn't like wearing a seatbelt. And so I took her view. And even our family was in a car accident in the late 60s where the car flipped over and none of us were wearing seatbelts. And we all survived. However, on my mom's side of the car, that hit a rock, and it kind of caved that side in. But she was, was able to get out, and everything was just a few scratches. And that kind of confirmed my thought, okay, I don't need to wear seatbelts because we would have all been killed, or mother would have been killed if she had been wearing the seatbelt. And so you can find things to justify your point of view. And it wasn't until more than 10 years later that I was attending an auto mechanics class. And the guy who was teaching it drove race cars. And he didn't tell us that we should wear seat belts and all that kind of stuff. He just said, I always wear one because when you're in a race car, you don't know who's going to be hitting you, and you have to be defensive when you're driving. And if you're knocked over to the side of the car, you can't control it anymore, and you've lost control. And so I'm thinking, okay, well, that's kind of personal responsibility back on me, because the other thing about safety with seat belts is like, well, I'm a safe driver, I'm going to be careful, but then to think about, oh, well, something might happen where that I'm thrown out, and I can't control the car anymore. That kind of cinched the deal. I think by then there was a lot more data, and the thinking was more towards people wearing them. But that was the thing that kind of sent me over, and it was okay from then on. All right, I'm sold. I'll wear them, no problem. So so now I'll go to the whole mask mandate thing. And now that we're winding down on these mandates, I'm reflecting back to this past year and think, okay, seatbelts versus masks. How different was my reaction? And so I'll give a little background. My whole philosophy, my mindset has been, I take care of my health. I have always exercised. I've walked or at least 45 minutes every day, just about every day since I was in college. And a few years ago, I drastically changed my eating habits. And I also cured my depression when I found choice theory, and without drugs and stuff. And so I've come to the conclusion that I have control over my health, like we have control over our behavior. We're the only ones. I'm the only one who can control my behavior, and I'm really the only one who can control my health. However, there are some outside influences, that have a lot to do with whether we get sick or not. So then came the whole mask controversy, and it really didn't sit right with me when they first started talking about it. I did find on the CDC and WHO website, they did not recommend it for the general public. And I was like, okay, good, great. I'm not going to wear one. It doesn't sound natural to me. People have been around for tens of thousands of years not wearing them. Why now? And so, but then the CDC changed their view, CDC and WHO, but there was no evidence. There was nothing that this study came out that definitely showed that they're beneficial and to do it. But we just kept hearing it. We just kept hearing over and over that you should wear it. And I keep thinking, my body, my choice. What happened to my body, my choice? And because my perception is that our bodies are phenomenal, and they have natural ways of healing. And the better you take care of yourself, the better your immunity, and you have less risk of getting sick. But there is a choice. Everybody has their choice. And then also I'm thinking, how can anybody who believe in choice theory not think that this is external control to force people to cover their faces and stay locked inside? Okay, those are the thoughts going through my mind. And so, but I wanted to understand the science. I really wanted to understand what's going on. And but the more I researched, I found the opposite thing. I found that how harmful they were. And so should I risk? They're harmful to the wearers. So why should I risk my health in order to help somebody else whose health I have no control over? And so that's kind of the dilemma that's going through my my mind. And then as I was, the people that I was following, a lot of them were getting censored. And I'm asked why, why are they getting censored? And, if there's a lot of evidence that wearing, covering your face is beneficial, then we should have that debate. And we should be able to find all kinds of information to support that. And why would they silence the opposition? Like in seatbelts, with the seatbelts, the data did prove that they were beneficial to use. And so you start thinking about, well, what types of governments censor information? And that's not something we're used to seeing in this country. And so that kind of stuck in my mind as there's more to the story here. Of course, now that the mandates are being lifted and we've got these experimental jabs that are being offered, and people now are gaining their freedom to go about, but then they're saying, okay, well, at first they said, okay, even if you got the jab, you still, and the reason I'm using that word and not the V word is that this might get censored, your YouTube, and I don't want to mess up your YouTube channel, no. So that's why I'm using that word here. And so yeah, first they said, no, even if you get the jab, then you still have to cover your face. But then all of a sudden they said, no, you don't have to do it anymore. And so they keep flip-flopping, and you're like, well, they're not saying that evidence shows that this is the reason why, it's just changing policy. And then how can you have credibility to somebody, some organization that keeps flip-flopping away, their mindset? And so then I was reading something the other day that some people, are still reluctant to take the mask off because they don't want people to think that they're Republicans. And so in that case, it's like, okay, the mask has nothing to do with safety and health anymore. It's all political. And then I hear that the Speaker of the House, who's fining representatives for not wearing it, I think first offense, it's no fine, then it's $500 and it's $2,500. And it's like, that's become a political thing, not a medical or health thing. And then you hear that, okay, well, now only the people who are allowed not to go with their face uncovered are those who've had the jab. And so are we creating a new class of citizens here? Is that bullying? Kind of sounds like Jim Crow to me, that we've got this class of citizens who's free to do whatever they want, and this class of citizens is you're still going to be restricted. And so, there's so many questions. There's so many questions that bring up. And so it's promoting people to do some critical thinking and hopefully creating some cognitive dissonance and saying, this doesn't all add up. How come we're acting this way? And how come we're doing something like this? And so I'm asking that you use your critical thinking skills to say, how do we deal with this? How do we get out of where we are? And so it's not just for this issue that I'm talking about here, but for anyone with an opposing view, would you consider that there can be more than one possible solution to any problem? And then I'd like to suggest that we keep choice alive and use this questioning process to get there.
All right. Well, thank you. You've given us some good thoughts there.
Well, that's the intent. The intent was to point out some, just to question some things that are going on, and to try to move away from just the emotion to the thinking part.
Right. I was going to ask you about that. Which are you allowing to drive you, the emotion or the thinking?
Well, I can't help but respond to the. It's reacting to the emotion at first, because that's what you do. I mean, because my first emotion was anger. You can't do that. That's not right. You can't do that. And it's like, okay, hang on. Let's look at it. Let's see, what's going on behind it. Let's try to understand why this is happening. And and then, I was okay for a little while, but then things kept getting worse and expecting more and more restrictions. And I'm like, that just goes against everything I know about how this country started and what it was founded on. So
Right, right. So in working with clients and people in general and so forth, the questioning process is not necessarily to grill them. It's
no,
to kind of find
absolutely not.
commonality.
Correct. It's right. It's to get them to think about things that they haven't really thought about. Because especially if you're hearing the same message over and over and over again, you do believe it. And because like everyone's doing it, and I'm not hearing anybody contesting it. So, but that stifles us, and it keeps us from making good decisions because we're not thinking of the whole picture. We're just allowing peer pressure to make the decision. And I mean, advertisers do that all the time. You throw those advertisements over and over and over again, and you're hearing the same thing. Yeah, I mean, we can say that about psych meds, that we think that they're miracle drugs.
Yeah, and you said something about curing your own depression.
I did, because I did get a prescription for an antidepressant, and I had already read choice theory by then, so I knew a little bit about it, and I guess Dr. Glasser's work put that question in my mind. I probably would have taken them had I not read the book, but that put enough of doubt in my mind that I said, I'm going to research this a little bit more. And I never did take the medication. I threw it away. I said, no, because I was in training to be a counselor at that time. And I decided that was the modality that I was going to use. And so I said, well, what better way to prove it out than to use it on myself and see if it works? So I did, and it did.
Was talking with someone the other day, and we were talking about perception, and they brought up the fact that where does perception come into interpretation as to how you are interpreting what you are hearing, seeing, and looking at how it resonates with you.
Right. And I think you need to listen to your body when something doesn't quite sound right to you. That's kind of your subconscious knows something else. And so it's that's your signal to go and research some more and learn some more. I'd say just don't take what people tell you. I mean, I remember in grade school when one of my teachers said, you can't believe everything you read in the paper. And I thought, my goodness, why not? That's the truth, right? But that's kind of stuck with me ever since. And I, especially something that I hear that kind of doesn't sit quite well, I'm going to research it and see what other evidence there is to prove it. What are other people saying? But when you're only hearing the one side, that should also ring alarm bells as well, because there is never anything where there's just one side.
And so am I hearing you say that it is our responsibility to find out the pros and cons of the other side?
Absolutely.
And that there may be more than two sides.
Right. There may be five sides.
So that we are responsible for our own behavior and our own health and our own healthy relationships.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, you've given us a lot of things to think about.
Well, good.
Thank you very much for being here. And we're going to close the airways, but those of you that are here with us live, we'll open it up for open discussion. And those of you that watch this later, realize that at 9 o'clock Eastern in the US, and then others, wherever you may be.
It's 11 o'clock Eastern. It's
11 o'clock Eastern, thank you. And then 10 and 9 and 8. And you may join us live and join in the discussions later. So thank you for being here. Good mental health, and go in peace.